Hello and welcome back. This is the Generally Bad Gamer Jolly, and today I'm going to continue reviewing or kind of talking about the Bladeborn profiles for Warcry, specifically from Tome of Champions 2021 in the second edition landscape. And this will be part two of two for Order. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what we have. So we have Steelheart's Champions. Now, Steelheart's champions currently I have found on eBay going at pretty good prices. So if you are fine with already assembled models, you get them for about the $25 price tag, but $10 shipping. So you're looking at about $35 pre-assembled. If you want unassembled so that you can assemble them yourself, you're looking at a little more, but they're still fairly affordable. So let's see if they are worth buying in the second edition landscape. So Steelheart's champions are basically a bunch of liberators. They're the closest that I could find to be similar to Steelheart's champions was liberators. So Steelheart himself is equivalent far as or similar, I guess the better way to say it, is similar to a Liberator Prime with Warblade and Sigmarite Shield. Now, Steelheart himself doesn't have a shield, but as far as the rest of the profile goes, this is the closest I could find to him. So what we're looking at is a similar offensive profile with Steelheart coming out slightly on top with 1 point more crit. And defensively, Steelheart has 5 more hit points but 1 less toughness. The difference we're looking at is the 25-point difference. So for 25 points, you're losing a point of toughness, going from 6 to 5, which a lot of times isn't going to be that big of a deal. You're going up 5 hit points, which is a lot of hit points going up, and you're going up 1 point in crit. Now, Steelheart wouldn't have access to the shield bash ability that the Liberator Prime with shield would have, but they both have access to Lay Low the Tyrants, which is an excellent ability, and Steelheart also has access to his Heroic Guard ability there, which will make him more difficult to damage. So for doubles, subtract 1 from damage points allocated by each hit and critical hit to him for the remainder of the round. So, looking at this, it all kind of depends on what you want. Do you want more hit points, slightly better profile, and a double that's pretty good defensively? Or do you just want the cheaper model with the slightly higher toughness? They both seem pretty good for their points, so these look fairly equal to me. It just depends on, do you want the extra defensive ability and some more points, or do you want just the cheaper leader? Next, we have Oberyn. Oberyn the Bold. And Oberyn the Bold is a liberator with Grand Hammer, is what it looks like to me. So what we're looking at is the exact same attack profile. Oberyn the Bold has 2 more hit points. They both have access to Lay Low the Tyrants, and Oberyn has access to the Heroic Guard. Now, this is a 30-point difference, so 30 points for 2 hit points and access to a defensive ability on a primarily offensive model, I don't think is going to be worth it. So I don't think Oberyn has a place anymore for just usefulness in the second edition Warrior Chamber list. He's just too many points more for an ability that you're probably not going to use with him because you'll probably use Onslaught instead, just so he's dishing out more damage. So I don't see the 30 extra points being worth it for him. Next, we have Angarad. Angarad Bright Shield. So Bright Shield is a Liberator with Warhammer and Sigmarite Shield. They have the exact same offensive profile, and for a staggering 55 points, you get 2 more hit points and access to Heroic Guard. So that is a lot of points, and Bright Shield is so not worth it anymore. If you have Bright Shield laid around, just have Bright Shield proxy as a Liberator with Warhammer and Sigmarite Shield. So overall, what we're looking at for them is that Steelheart himself could be equal to or possibly worse than the Liberator Prime of Warblade and Sigmarite Shield. Equal to because I do think he's still a good option for if you want a leader that hits slightly harder, has a decent chunk more hit points, and a really good double to help reduce damage. So if you want a leader that's going to be able to get in there and stick around a bit, Steelheart's a good option. A little less because he's just more points. But Oberyn and Bright Shield, definitely not worth it. Too many more points for all the more they bring to the table. This warband, I wouldn't even spend the 35 points on if you don't already have them. But if you already own them, run Steelheart if you want. Um, Additionally, I forgot to mention this when we're starting. I have, at the request of somebody that commented on one of my other videos, I have started saying when profiles will be kind of equivalent and useful if you already have them, or have some sort of role if you already have them. But so if I own them, I'd possibly run Steelheart. If I didn't own them, I wouldn't bother buying them. Next, we have the Farstriders. So for the Farstriders, we're looking at a little bit cheaper than Steelhearts online if you're cool with somebody having assembled the models, at about $25. It goes up quite a bit if you're looking at package. I think it went up to about 40 or 50 for unassembled and packaged, so a considerable price jump if you want them brand new. But what we're looking at for the Farstriders is essentially a, I think, Vanguard Hunter Prime. Yep, a Hunter Prime, and then 2 just Hunters is really what we're looking at for this. So for Sanson Farstrider himself, he's the equivalent to a Hunter Prime. They have a similar range profile, but he actually has 2 inches less range than the Hunter Prime. They have the exact same melee profile, and Sanson has 5 more hit points and 1 less movement than the Hunter Prime. And he has access to his triple, which is a really good triple, but only if you're running this warband himself, Farstrider's warband himself, because the triple will only affect him and the 2 guys that come with his Underworld's warband, or his Bladeborn brothers. But what we're looking at for 40 points more, we're losing 2 inches on a range attack, we're losing 1 point in speed and 5 hit points. So you can't really say you're gaining anything for the 40 hit points. You could kind of say maybe it's a wash because you're 5 hit points more, but your threat range and your movement is less. So is that triple worth 40 points is kind of what we're looking at. And I say no, because we'll see here in a second that the other 2 really aren't worth it. So I would just probably stick with the Hunter Prime with the increased range on the range attack and the extra point of movement. Now, the other 2 are equivalent to just Vanguard Hunters. And as we can see, they are 30 points more than the Vanguard Hunters. And they are just a net loss on stats. You lose 2 inches of range on their range attack, and you lose 1 point of movement. You get 2 hit points, but similar to before, the 2 hit points are worth far less than the range you lose and the movement you lose. So you're paying 30 points more for models that aren't as good. And in order to make Farstrider's ability useful, you want to have ideally him and one, if not both, of his lackeys. And his lackeys are really, really not worth it. I own these models. I don't plan on running them as Farstriders models ever again, probably. They will just end up being normal hunters and a normal Hunter Prime. So, needless to say, if you don't own them, don't buy them. They are not very good at all in the current second edition landscape, and they are a ton more points overall than their counterparts, which their counterparts got upgrades to range and speed. So just go with the equivalent counterparts in all circumstances, pretty much. Next, we have Stormsire's Cursebreakers. On eBay at the moment, Stormsire's Cursebreakers are going for about $40 with shipping. So we're starting to go back up in price a bit more, even for assembled models. So if you want new out of the packaging on eBay, it looked like they were costing more than this. So this is the minimum you're going to pay is $40 probably, and you're going to hope that whoever assembled them did a really nice job or put up some better pictures than what we see there, because it's kind of tough to tell how they're assembled there in that picture. Now, are they worth it? So Stormsire himself is closest equivalent to to a Knight Incantor. They have similar attack profiles. Actually, they have the exact same attack profiles, it looks like. The magic user range attack, which is always kind of meh. Actually, this one's better than the normal one because it's strength 4. So this spell attack profile is alright. It can guarantee some damage against toughness 3. Better chance to hit against toughness 4. So offensively, as far as their stats, the same. As far as their other stats, same movement, same toughness, Stormsire or Stormsire has 2 more hit points. So once again, we're looking at that 2 more hit points for 30 points, which right there is not worth it. So the ability that it has access to has to be balls awesome in order for that 30 points to be worth it. Now, I like his ability. It's a triple, which does make it not as useful, but it's a triple with that's a 9-inch threat range. You roll dice equal to the value of the ability for each 3 plus 3 damage. So that triple, if you have a high value on your dice, could be a lot of damage. But in order to get that, they're losing access to the Knight Incantor's triple, which is a value of the dice damage to all models within 3 inches of the Knight Incantor, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Now, the Knight Incantor will damage itself and damage friendlies around, but it is an amazing, reliable to get since it's a triple way to damage hordes. I have to say that Stormsire is not worth the 30 extra points. If you have him already, you could try running him as an alternative to Knight Incantor to see how his triple works for just some really possibly decent range damage, but I would not go pick him up just for him. So let's see what the other two look like. So Dawn's Guard and Charmed. So Amos and Rastus. Rastus the Charmed, yeah, something like that. They are both basically evocators with Tempest Blade and Stormstave. Man, my pronunciation is horrible today, but I'm not editing any of this. This is one shot. So, what we're looking at is 30 points more for each of their attack profiles is slightly better. One of them has 1 more crit, one of them has 1 more strength. And the rest of their stats are same move, same toughness, and they each have 2 more hit points. So we're looking at a point in crit, 2 hit points, or a point in strength and 2 hit points for 30 points. I don't think that's worth it. I do not think that one is worth it either. So I would just stick with the generic evocator with Tempest Blade and Stormstaves because you're running Stormcast already, so you want any points you can get to just get extra models on the table. That's been one of the nice things about 2nd edition for Stormcast is that they lowered the point cost on a lot of models, so now you could actually field 5, 6, even 7 models in a Stormcast army instead of 4. Instead of being perpetually stuck at 4, maybe 5 if you really skimmed. So overall, I say that none of these models are worth running, even if you have them. If you really want to try to make Stormsire useful, you could try to run him if you already have him, but I have him and I don't plan on running him as himself anymore. So I would say definitely not worth buying, and I don't plan on ever running them as themselves. Now next, we're getting into the last 2 Order Bladeborn warbands from Tome Champions 2021, and they're both Sylvan F. And these two are interesting because they don't have a whole lot of equivalents in the normal Sylvan F list. So, Ylthari's Guardians, currently going for 55 with an 8% discount from a particular buyer. So we're getting expensive now. There's no cheap options of them out there. You're just looking at you're paying a pretty good amount for these models. So are they worth it? So Ylthari himself or herself, whichever he or she is, whatever they are, Ylthari doesn't really have an equivalent. So we're just going to compare it to a Tree Revenant Scion with Protector Glaive. So Ylthari has this mage range attack, which is alright at best and never really great. They both have a similar melee attack profile in 2-inch range, 3 strength, 3 attacks. The Scion with Protector Glaive wins on the damage if a 2 to 5 is compared to a 1 and 4. Then you're looking at both have movement 4, both have speed 3, and we're looking at Ylthari has 5 more hit points than the Revenant Scion. So we're going up by 50 points. We're netting a range attack that's 5 more hit points and a slightly worse melee attack. I'd say overall Ylthari is probably not worth running it. Yeah, just not worth running it over a Tree Revenant Scion. And once you're getting up to 165 points, there are other better leaders that you could go on to. So I probably wouldn't run Ylthari, but to be honest, I wasn't really running Ylthari to begin with in first edition. Everybody else is a flavor of Tree Revenant. So we're looking at how do they compare to a standard Tree Revenant? And comparing them to the Tree Revenant is, I don't think it's a complete accurate way to kind of say how they work. The Tree Revenant is cheap, 65 points, not a great melee profile, all right. Normal profile just because it has 10 hit points, but overall pretty squishy. 65 points and an awesome triple that just lets it teleport. The triple is worth a ton on the Tree Revenant. So what you're asking yourself really is, would I rather run Skaeth, Galagan, or Onslain over something that can teleport for a triple and is cheaper? And it really comes down to what you're looking for. If you need something that can be any place on the board at any time, and or is just cheaper because you don't have a ton of points, the Tree Revenant is the obvious way to go. However, I still plan on running these other 3 in some lists. Probably not all 3 in the same list anymore, but running each of them from time to time because they kind of offer a different option than the normal Tree Revenant adds. The normal Tree Revenant, like I said, the teleport ability is why you take them and a low points. However, Sylvaneth don't have a lot of reliable damage dealers in the low points cost categories. So I think each of the remaining 3 kind of fill nice niches. Scanthiel has 4 attacks, only 3 strength, but 2/4 damage. So pretty good against other chaff. Also 2 more hit points on that model. So the far superior melee profile and 2 more hit points, I think could be worth the 20 extra points if you need something that could deal more damage more than you need something that can teleport. Galagan, whichever it is kind of similar. It is more points, 40 more points, which we're starting to get pretty steep. No more hit points, but that melee profile could still be good and intimidating. You're looking at a 2-inch reach, which is nice. Only 2 attacks, which is not nice. 4 strength and a 3/6 damage. But when we're using the double for Ylthari's Guardians also, it becomes essentially 4/7 damage. So you're looking at something that could be pretty threatening to any chaff or medium-sized model that is damaged, or even if the chaff's not damaged, something that's pretty threatening to them. And it can stay out of their melee range if they only have a 1-inch reach. So I still like Galahan as an option. And Anslane's the same way. Anslane has a range profile, which you don't get range profiles on Sylvaneth until you start going up in points a considerable amount. So there are the winged archers that they have now. I don't remember what they're called, but they're considerably more expensive than 85 points, and that's your cheapest range attacks now. So if you want something to just do some nickel and diming damage or something that can possibly finish off a runner, I still like Anslane. And the nice thing is that the double works for Anslane's, I said Aslane's, Anslane's attack, range attack also. So you then go to each hit being 2 damage and each crit being 5 damage. So I still like the 3 of them as options. So overall, I would say Ylthari itself not worth it. The other 3 can be worth it if you want damage dealing profiles more than a teleport profile, or just any of the other cheap options that you have. So if you want them more than a Spite Revenant in the net, these are pretty good. If you have them, I think the 3 mooks from the Bladeborn Warband are very worth running. If you don't have them, I don't think I'd pick them up for the price point that they're at, just because Sylvaneth don't have a lack of options at the moment. So for that money, you could pick up other box sets that could possibly give you a lot more models and just as many options. So if you have them, have fun with them, run them. I think they're still good overall, except for Ylthari. If you don't have them, I don't think they're worth the money to pick up. Next, we have Skaeth's Wild Hunt. So Skaeth's Wild Hunt is currently going for $70 online. Uh, so we're talking expensive now. So we're talking that Skaeth and his Wild Hunt has to do something grand in order to be worth the $70. But if you already have them, let's see if they're worth running. So the interesting part about Skaeth and his Wild Hunt is they don't really have any equivalent models in the Sylvaneth Force. They are completely unique as far as looks and as far as the stat lines and everything go too for a lot. So Skaeth, the closest thing I could find to compare him to was a Flitwing Scion, which is the winged archers that the Sylvaneth have relatively recently gotten. They're both quicker, with the Flitwing having the advantage of being move 10 and also flying instead of mounted. Skaeth is tougher, with 4 toughness and 7 more hit points, and their attack profiles, you could say, are fairly equivalent, with the Flitwing having a longer ranged attack, but worse damage. Uh, but when you look at 2 versus 3 attacks, I think they're fairly equal. So what Skaeth comes down to is if you own Skaeth already, and not a Flitwing Scion, and want a faster leader at that point level, so 180 points, 170 points around there, I think Skaeth is still worth it, especially since mounted units can climb stairs now. However, if you have a Flitwing Scion, I say it is the better choice than Next we have Carthion, which Carthion doesn't have an equivalent. I could find an equivalent. The Dryad, will go to Shiok there in a second. But Carthion, I think, is excellent. If you have Carthion, run Carthion or Carthane, however you pronounce it. The profile is not bad. Movement 5, 12 hit points, 2-4 damage. Pretty nice on an 80 point model, but Carthane also has access to that triple, which adds 1 to the attack character. I can't talk today. To the attack characteristic actions of characters within 6 inches of him. So it is the same triple essentially as the 260 point flyer the Arch Revenant has, but it has a larger bubble than the Arch Revenants. And for 80 points, being able to have this ability in any of your Sylvaneth warbands is fantastic. Carthion is almost auto-include in my book. If you have him and you're running Sylvaneth, put him in. So worth his points. Now Shiok, the closest thing I could find to compare Shiok to is the Dryad. They both have a similar attack profile. They're both 70 points, and they both have the same movement, toughness, and hit points. Shiok comes out slightly ahead with 1 point more in crit. However, Shiok does not have the Dryad ability. So what we're kind of looking at here is, were you only wanting to run 1 Dryad to fill points? Or were you running multiple Dryads? If you're running 3 or more Dryads, you definitely go with Dryads over Shiok, because the triple, their ability, adds to attacks of all Dryads going at a certain target. If you're only running 1 Dryad, then you should just switch it out for Shiok, because Shiok just has the slightly better profile for the same points. Althane. Althane is a cheap range attack profile, and The closest thing we have to compare it to is a Gossamed Archer, because that is the next cheapest range attack profile in the generic Sylvaneth list. So you're looking at 3 to 15 range, 2 attacks, 3 strength, 1 4 for Altheon, and you're actually losing 5 inches of maximum range on the Gossamed Archer. Their melee profiles are the exact same. The Gossamed is 10 speed, Altheon is 5 speed. They have the same toughness and the same hit points. So if you want someone that can move around quickly and still have some range harassing, the Gossamed Archer is probably a good choice, but you're paying 50 points for that. If you just want a range harasser who's also not horrible on speed, 5 speed, then you definitely go Althane. Althane will save you 50 points there, which is almost another Tree Revenant, and has a further max range on the range attack. So I think Althane is still a really good option. Then we have Ligwain, the dog, the cat, whatever it is. We don't really have an equivalent to it, so what we're going to do is just compare it to the Tree Revenant. They have almost the exact same offensive profile with Ligwain or Cat being 1 point more crit. However, you're not running Ligwain, the Cat, or the Tree Revenant for the offensive profiles. So what we're looking for is their mobility. The Tree Revenant has 2 more hit points, 4 movement, 3 toughness. The Cat has 8 movement, 3 toughness, 8 hit points. So they're both squishy. The Cat is naturally faster, 8 speed versus 4, but doesn't have access to that teleporting triple. So what you're looking at is, do you want something that can be fast every round, or something that can possibly teleport for a triple? And I think they're both valid options. You're paying 5 points more for a lot more speed and a slightly better melee profile in case you need it, losing 2 hit points. But I still think the Cat, it's still a pretty good option. Now, at $70 minimum for this warband, what do I think? I think, like I said, Skaeth can be equal to or less than a Flitwing Scion. If you own the Flitwing, go with it. If you don't, okay, go with Skaeth if you have Skaeth. Carthion or Carthane is pretty much auto-include. Sheok can be equal to a Dryad or better, depends on if you're taking one Dryad or multiple Dryads. Althane, I think, is worth it because you're looking at, it's just by far the cheapest range option for some nickel and diming damage or taking out a rudder. And the Cat, I think, is equal to, possibly a little better than multiple Tree Revenants. I think it's tough to say that the Cat's better than a singular Tree Revenant because having access to teleport's nice, but if you're going multiple Tree Revenants, I think the Cat could be good because it's just turn by turn faster. So you'll be able to just kind of move it around without having to rely on dice. Are they worth 70 points? Or not 70 points, $70? Possibly, if you really like the models also. I don't know if I'd spend 70 on them. I own them, so I'm still going to run the ever-living hell out of these models because they are great if you already have them. All right. So that's kind of the review of everything. No final thoughts slide on this. Sorry for the stammering and bad pronunciations. I'm pretty tired today, but I wanted to get this video out, so I want to thank everybody for watching the video to the end. If you're here at this point, continue to leave me comments and feedback, like and subscribe if you enjoy this. I plan on covering the rest of the Bladeborn profiles for Chaos, Death, and Destruction sometime within the next 2 weeks. So those will be coming out soon. Everybody have a good day. This is Generally Bad Gamer Jolly signing off.